Welcome to the back office. I'm Dalayna Dillon, the founder and creative director of Signify Marketing, and this is where you sit in on real strategy. Each episode, we step into an active business and have honest conversations about marketing, growth, leadership, and the decisions happening behind the scenes. So no one has it fully figured out, but we are building anyways. And today we're sitting down with Heather Turner, business owner, former president of Jenks Chamber of Commerce, and currently serving in a strategic leadership role with the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. And there's a lot more that we could add into that list. She's worked alongside hundreds of business owners, and she sees what it really takes to help businesses grow and what kind of brings about some struggle in different areas. And so today, hopefully we will pick her brain a little bit about what it takes to build a business that lasts, because obviously that's the goal, is to have a business that lasts. Yeah. So let's just start off with your business, because you are a business owner, and I know there's a lot of other things in that list, but tell us some of the story behind Anthem Road Academy, which is your business that, we know around here in Oklahoma, but tell us a little bit about Anthem.
So I started out teaching public school music, and so my undergraduate degree is vocal performance and music education, and so I started out teaching public school for 7 years, had my first kiddo, and was actually had my second kiddo, had two kids, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and thought, you know what, I love what I do, but I just want to have a little bit more flexibility to work around some of their school activities, to be in the PTA and to do Trojans for Christ and to be the mystery reader in their classrooms and all of these things. And so I took a really bold step. I was teaching private lessons after school, and I met with all my students and said, hey, if I have to charge you more because I have to pay for somewhere to go do this, would you still stick with me? And all of them said yes. And that's really how it started. I first started teaching in my home and going to their homes. I found out very quickly that was not the best use of everyone's time, because you had travel time between lessons.
Right.
You also, most people's homes are not set up as a music or performance studio. And so you had a piano maybe in the front living room by the loud kitchen, and the TV was going, and maybe other siblings were coming in and out or whatever. So it just wasn't the most professional teaching environment. And so a lot of distractions. And then even in my own home, where I did have a teaching room, had a piano room. Remember, I had toddlers.
Yes.
And they would come in and out, and mom, and whatever. And I realized pretty quickly, I'm going to need to have a space to do this. And if I really care about and take pride in the work and being totally focused on the student. And so really what started it out was wanting to do something I love with people that I love in a city that I love. And that's really how it all worked out. So we opened Anthem Road Academy. It was then called Abbey Road Academy, which is a whole story in and of itself. A good lesson for startups and businesses to learn from.
People need to know the whole.
That's right. The whole story.
Yeah.
So we call it Abbey Road. Actually, the place that we moved into here on Main Street, Jenks, 15 years ago was called Octopus Garden. If you know anything about the Beatles, that was one of their songs in an album. And there was a place called Abbey Road Catering. There was a lot of other Abbey Roads. However, we opened Abbey Road Academy, and there were two reasons I used that name. One was my dad loved the Beatles, and I wanted it to be sort of a really inclusive, fun name that people related to our business. I didn't want it to feel too stuffy, because we teach all different styles and genres. That's something I wanted people to feel like the music lessons were tailored to them. And then the other reason was my voice teacher when I was growing up said, Heather, if you ever opened a studio, start it with an A, because you'll be listed first in the yellow pages. So that was back in the day when there was yellow pages. Of course, that's not the case anymore, but still we do get sometimes, if they list things alphabetically, you get listed first. And so anyway, that was just a marketing tip from my voice teacher. And so we had that name, and then 6 years into the business, when we had 2 locations at that point, we got a really scary 12-page letter from Universal Music Group, which was a cease and desist, because they own Abbey Road London, and they said we could dilute their brand all the way. Abbey Road London knew about our little Abbey Road Academy.
That is crazy.
in Jenks America. And so I took a couple days to cry, and because I was like, oh no, this is so expensive. It is expensive to have to change your name because of the signage
Right.
on your building. Of course,
Yeah.
all of your marketing materials, all your sponsorships, just everything that you built. And I really was so concerned. And I met then a mentor. So this was 2017. And I met a mentor. Her name is Shannon Wilburn, and she's still a great friend of mine today. And still her story intertwines with mine quite a lot, which I can share. And she said, Heather, go to this conference. It was called the Unconference Conference for franchises and emerging brands. And emerging was any business who had less than 500 locations. So a lot of businesses have less than 500 locations.
Yeah.
She said, go. And when I went to this conference, and it opened my eyes because so many business owners were there, and so many of them talked about changing the name and how they went through that process. And I was like, okay, they've all done this, or a lot of people have done this. I can do it too. And I also learned about having your international trademark.
Yeah.
I didn't realize I needed that. And of course now, then I went back. I did a little form with my then staff and said, we get to choose who we serve, who we are, what our values are, how we go about business. And now we get to choose a new name. And we got to keep our logo, which is the ARA. And we just changed the first name to Anthem. So instead of Abbey Road Academy, it's Anthem Road.
That's really cool. I mean, like, that's nice that you were able to do that, to keep that part.
I know, because we had a local designer, Matt Williams, here in Jenks America, designed our logo. So we got that trademarked. And then we also, Anthem means a spirited song that identifies a group or a cause. So I even think the name's better than our first name. I love it. I love what it means. And then Road, of course, learning is a journey. It's a lifelong journey that we join our students on. And then Academy, a place of learning. So that's Abbey Road, or Anthem Road Academy.
Yeah.
And so we opened in 2011, and then grew quite a lot. So we had a good network of musicians that we loved and trusted, and we brought on different musicians and just really dove into the culture of being student-focused, community-driven from the start, really intentionally investing in our communities. And so I think when you give and you give and you give, then God honors that. And when you honor people that you're called to serve, and you honor the gift that God has given you, your calling, and then you honor him, then I just think he blesses that. And so over time, we grew to our Bixby location as our second location. And then a few years past that, we grew to our Broken Arrow location. And then now the space that we're sitting in right now is the Anthem Road Little Black Box Theater. And so we've had lots of ups and downs in the middle, but we've had incredible people come on board. And I have so many really cool stories of what God has done through and in this place because we said yes to opening a business. So,
well, so many questions. We could talk just about Anthem for a long time because a lot of businesses think about scaling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you started as you were the were the sole income producer and the business owner, like, I guess a solopreneur.
Everything. Yeah.
And so I think the idea to scale, everyone likes that idea, but there's so much that goes into that because it was your baby, and you have to be willing, if you really want to scale, you have to be willing to let go of so much.
You do.
So how was that transition to, like, release things so that you could grow and expand?
Well, it was hard. My very first time to hire someone was actually Maggie. She was one of my students, and I was realizing I was, doing everything from cleaning the toilets to signing up students to calling. I would go door to door with flyers in neighborhoods, to going door to door to our business neighbors and doing all kinds of partnerships with them to really try to get our brand awareness out there. I was doing free DJing and music and karaoke and everywhere that I could, and then teaching a lot. And of course, I had those toddlers and my sweet husband at home. And so I just started to realize, okay, as this grows, I'm going to be the lid on my own growth. I'll be the lid on our business's growth. And what that meant is that I would actually limit the growth and opportunity of the other teachers I had brought on. And that's that's what made me make the change. It actually was not so much of, because I already had a lot of students, right? So it wasn't really about me. It was truly about, if I try to do everything, I actually limit the growth of others, and that is the opposite of who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And I feel like my purpose, God-given calling, is to discover and develop the potential in others, and whether that's a student or a teacher or a leader or a business owner or a community. And so whatever that form that takes. And so so that's really what was the catalyst, is just like, I'm not going to be, my whole purpose is to develop others. I'm not going to be the lid on that for anyone else. And so we started out just with the part-time admin help, and she was one of my students, and she started helping take calls. And I remember thinking, I close like 99.9% of calls we get in.
Yeah.
I knew all the teachers really well. I can make the best match, and I had to give that up and know that she might only close 80%, right? She may, when we scaled to multiple locations, this is a funny thing, but I used to do all the Christmas decorations, and I had to be like, we're going to let other people do Christmas decorations. Oh my gosh, that was hard to do that.
Yeah, the decorating.
I'm like, no, I want it to look a certain way. And I had to remember, guess what? It doesn't matter, because I'm not doing it, and somebody else is getting to take pride in that. And so the hardest thing, of course, is when you build something, you put your blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice into it. You have to sort of steward it with open hands, and remember that everything that we have, God gave to us. It's not even ours anyway. And so we're meant to steward, and if He entrusts us with something, that we should hold it with our hands open, and then He will, if we steward it well, He'll bring the right people in. And that doesn't mean they're going to do everything like you would do it, but what it does is it stretches you and them, and you get to learn from one another. And sometimes you learn from making big mistakes together or little mistakes together, and sometimes you learn when something goes well. And so through that time, of course, then we went to having an admin lead at each location, and then I went back to school because I felt like I needed a broader perspective, not just music and education, which is what I had, but as our business grew, I really needed a stronger business acumen. And so when I went back to get my MBA, it really forced me to duplicate myself more and push more into leaders. And so then now we've got, of course, Dalayna Dillon, who's our general manager, and she's doing an incredible job. And that has made way for someone else to grow in the business. Whereas if I stayed in, even after I graduated, if I come back in and take that role, that limits her growth, and I'll never do that. So that's not who I'm called to be. And now she can grow. Now you can grow. Now other leaders within the organization can grow. And that's, I think, that's what you're called to if you want to scale and grow a business. You can't control and grow. You get to choose.
That's a very good point, because we can do one or the other. We can control or we can grow.
That's right.
Yeah. So you did scale. You did go to three locations. At what point, like what were the signs? What were the indicators that it's like, we need another location? What were those?
So we had, before we scaled to just our second location, we actually had a long waiting list. We had built out our current building as far as we could build it out. And so we had a waiting list of people trying to get into lessons. So it was just demand.
Yeah.
And then people said, well, why don't you just get one larger location and, instead of scale to 2 locations? And I just really, it wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what was best for the client. So it's not always best for the client for you to have a lot of locations. Don't open a lot of locations for cool factor, because it's more expensive. You have 2 insurances, 2 internet bills, 2 utility,
So true.
You actually grow your expenses in doing that. 2 administrators, for example. But for our type of business, I know it's moms dropping off kids right after school.
Yeah.
And I know if you're doing it every week, if it's 45 minutes away for a 30-minute lesson, it's just exhausting.
Yeah.
And that's hard to keep up. So when I looked at our average student, we keep them about 2.5 years. Some of them we keep for 10 years, but on average, it's 2.5 years. And I didn't want to see that diminish if people have to drive to us from too far away. And so I polled families, and I said, how many of you where are you coming from?
Yeah.
And that's when I did that poll, and I found so many of them were coming from Bixby. And so we just reached out to them and said, hey, would you help us launch a Bixby location? Would you move to that location if we open? And of course, we had a core group of people who said they would.
Yeah.
And that was an indicator that we can start. We started in downtown Bixby. Bixby then had a renovation plan for their downtown, which was about a 3-year plan. And so after we were in downtown Bixby for a couple of years, we actually moved on to a main street, like Memorial, which is a high traffic. I will say that move wasn't easy either. It was doubling our expense. Oh no, it was very much more.
Did families like it though?
They loved it.
Okay.
So, but to make the decision as
right
to go into a longer term lease with the more expensive build out, to put the money into, the rent is higher and all of that. That was a tough decision. But as soon as we moved there, it's next to all of the things the moms like. So it's closer to Target, Walmart, Panera, Tacos for Life, all of these things right around it. And we quadrupled in size within about 8 months. Yeah. So we grew a lot. And then we were getting requests for Broken Arrow for a while. But for 2 years, I looked at spaces for Broken Arrow. And it's so diverse in demographic. And so there's a lot of resources businesses can use to find out demographics. Your local library has some demographic tools, and your Department of Commerce has tools that you can get demographic data, traffic pattern data. So I did a lot of studying on that, but I would say that is the broadest of our locations. That spread is more broad, and it's a little bit more challenging. And so don't just take for granted because you have done great in one area that will just translate to any other community. So I would say that's a lesson for entrepreneurs, and whether you're looking to scale, don't just take for granted, hey, I was successful in X community, of course I'll be successful in another. It's not that you can't be, but you should really learn a lot about that community, because just neighboring communities can have very different cultures, very different spending habits. They can just have different expectations for business, and how far they're willing to travel, things like this. And so very important to do your due diligence.
Yeah, and I think that can be the tricky thing of doing the multi-location. Like you said, you could do larger one place, but like the multi-location, you do have to take in consideration each one's going to still have a different personality. They do. In a way. And you're running all of them. They all kind of need different touches.
They do. They all need a different sort of vibe that matches and relates to the people that you're serving. Yeah. So again, you want to have consistency in your brand and consistency in your values, while at the same time having flexibility to serve the person in an effective way. And so sometimes what business owners do is they think about efficiency. And efficiency is really important, but it's not as important as effectiveness. Yeah. And people get those things confused a lot, and they think, well, we're being efficient. Everyone's exactly the same. We're being efficient. We're doing what's cheapest for the business. Well, sometimes what's cheapest for the business, what's easiest for the business, isn't what's most effective in serving your client. So you really have to think about, okay, well, how can I best serve? And maybe I'm thinking about me, and that's why we have our motto is student focused, community driven, because it's not Heather focused. It's not, what's best for Anthem Road focused. It's what's best for the student.
Yeah. So you, for a time, served as president of the Jenks Chamber of Commerce, and of course, that gave you a front row seat to a lot of different businesses, like all across the board. Yeah. So from that, how was that eye-opening to you of just like what other businesses were experiencing that maybe Anthem wasn't?
Yeah, well, what I would say is this. One of the most eye-opening experiences of working at the city level with a whole lot of different businesses, and then now at the state level with a whole lot more businesses and a lot of different communities, is that pretty much large corporations and small businesses, a lot of them face the same challenges. It's, where am I getting my workforce? How am I developing and training and retaining my workforce? How am I keeping the cash flow flowing so that I can make sure everyone's getting paid and I'm still profiting enough to continue doing business? How am I interacting with and contributing to my community? So really large companies who have, you take a real estate agency, for example, who has, a whole lot of locations around the state. They have some of the same challenges that a small business has as far as who's going to run my day-to-day operations, how am I going to attract, my new team of realtors, for example. How am I going to retain those, because there's a lot of competition. They have a lot of the same things. Then you look at a big company, look at a big aerospace company who employs thousands of people, same challenge. Where am I getting my workforce from? How am I filling the gap between what they come to me with educationally and experientially versus what I actually need, and how they execute on day to day? How am I building a culture? When I have 10 people, everyone has 10% of the culture. Think about that. When you have a small team, every team member you bring on, they influence the culture in a really big way. When you have a really big company, sometimes you can get like a little bit relaxed on that, and you're like, oh, that's okay. We have 1,000 people. But in a small team, that they're in, a department they're in, you get one toxic person, and it can kind of, infect a whole team, which can really touch your culture. And so large or small, it's the same questions. It's just maybe affecting a different percentage of the business. Maybe you have multiple revenue streams instead of one. And so I would say, that's one thing. And of course, in a civic role, you really learn. In a small business, you can make decisions very quickly.
Right.
But in a large organization, so right now I have under me at the Department of Commerce about 125 employees.
Wow.
And making decisions for a larger organization, and there are way larger organizations than that, sometimes it can be more slow moving because you're impacting so many more employees. And so again, smaller, large, a lot of the same type of decisions, but the speed at which you can make those decisions and the intimacies you can have with your people, that is what probably changes.
So the small business owners who think that nobody's experiencing what they're experiencing
it's not right. Yeah. You don't get to get away from that going to a larger business. It's the same. It's just, in fact, it might just take longer to get to an answer.
Yeah. Yes, that which is more frustrating.
Yes.
So based on all of your experience and what you have seen, what do you feel like are some of the key things that separate businesses that thrive and ones that struggle?
I think humility is, if you are a leader and you're trying to grow your business, you've got to be humble enough to listen to your customer instead of just have your own opinion about how you want to serve or what product you want to give. The market determines whether or not they value your product or service. And if you see that faltering, you've got to listen again to the market. You've got to be humble enough to take a minute and listen to the market. You have to be humble enough, if you want to grow, to listen to other people and bring in other people. Have your principles and your values that you stick to, again, consistent on your values, consistent on who you're called to be, but flexible on your method, and open to the perspective of others so that you can evolve and grow as the business needs to and as the market demands it. So I'd say humility, and then I'd say resilience and resourcefulness, because you're going to have ups and downs. In COVID, we lost 100 students in a week.
Crazy.
In a week.
That's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
And I remember just thinking, how am I going to pay all these leases?
Wow, yeah.
And we paid all of our teachers first. I know there's a lot of pay yourself first books out there, but I'd say when you're a business owner, a lot of times I always feel a really strong responsibility to everyone who's here. So we pay everyone first. And sometimes, and a lot of times for years, that would mean we're not taking pay, not because we couldn't take anything, but because we knew it was important to reinvest those dollars back into the business. And if we didn't do that, we definitely would not have 4 locations. Because that meant us putting dollars in the business to build or to market or to buy equipment instead of putting it in our pocket. And so I think making that decision, and that's also probably a little bit of humility, just a little bit of like, okay, maybe I'm not driving as fancy a car, but I know I'm investing in people. Or maybe I'm not giving myself as big a paycheck as I could, as far as if I took all the revenue from my business, but I'm investing in people and I'm investing in the business. And if I do that, then I have stability over time, which during COVID, why we were okay is because we had put money into savings in the business. And so we were able to stay afloat during those hard times and not have to lay off any of our admin team or anybody.
Yeah.
So that when business started building back up, we were ready to go. And that wasn't always easy, but that's one way. If you're asking the question, how do you sustain business over time? Humility and good stewardship, and then just a possibility mindset. Seeing opportunities, being resourceful, and just sticking through it when it's hard. Because I met with I just came from Aerospace Council, and a high up fellow from a large aerospace company said to me, my board asked me to justify this decision again to expand their business. And he said, I told him, I've already justified this to you. Are we in the long game or the short game? And his board said, well, of course we're in the long game. He said, okay, well then trust me, it's going to have hills and valleys, and every business is going to have hills and valleys and cycles. And if you have some good people you can trust, you get your core and you say, we're in this, and we're going to see some things that don't always look easy, and then we're going to see the return on that because we stuck with it. So don't give up.
Yes. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you've seen in businesses, both at the local and state level?
Really basic, which is using all your money for yourself. So I think that's the number one.
Really?
Yes. I think just as soon as people start making money, they start using it on their own personal lifestyle. And they don't anticipate that once you're going up that you can have a down cycle.
Yeah.
Again, the market determines a lot. And so you bring your best every day, but no one predicted COVID.
Right.
And then when that happened, if we had no resources because we had used them all, then we would have had to shut down locations. And so I think I see that. I think the other one is over financing, like financing to get fancy so that you look cool.
Yeah.
But when you're not actually profiting yet. So I would say don't go and over finance things so you can look cool. I've seen a lot of businesses do that, and then they have a big debt that they have to pay after they've actually closed their business because they weren't actually making any profit. And so I think being cognizant, debt doesn't have to be a bad thing, but don't over leverage yourself and to look cool.
Right. About appearance.
Purchase what you need. Yeah.
Well, so that really, I'm kind of surprised that you said that that's one of the most common. Not that I don't think it happens,
so
but you're saying it's very common. And I think it is because people they want to look a certain way. And basically it shows you that you can't judge a business even by the outward appearance.
No, and that goes back to humility.
Yes.
Because it's like we're all, of course, I want a really cool car, and of course, I want the state-of-the-art everything. But is that because it serves the student better, or is that because it looks cool?
Yeah.
And I think I always had to ask that question. Is this something that, is it because it serves the student better? Or is it because it serves your client better? Or is it because it develops a better product, depending on what type of business you have? Or is it because you want to look cool? And looking cool is only great if you've actually got the finances to back it up, because otherwise it's like you've got something super fancy and then the next week you're like, well, actually we have to file bankruptcy. And so that happens on big companies and small. And then some of the other problem is just that you see as far as innovative technologies or emerging industries. I would say it's just hard, and we entrepreneurs, that's what makes us awesome, is that we underestimate how hard it will be, and we overestimate how awesome and fast we can do things.
Yes.
And that's what's awesome. That's what's awesome about America. We love it. We love that. That's what makes the world go round. But it also, there's a saying that says in the short term, you can't go as far and you won't make as much as you think. But in the long term, you'll underestimate how far you can go.
Yeah.
If you get a great team around you. And so so I would say, take heart. I love the entrepreneurial risk taking spirit. I love it. But sometimes it's good to have someone around the table that can say, hey, ask that qualifying question. Are you doing this because it's the best thing to serve your product or your client? Or and can you afford this?
Yes.
And I know that's so basic, but that is probably the number one thing. And then just that, the other thing is just at this point in time, if we look at the state or the national, of course, we're looking at imports and exports, and we're looking at tariffs and some things like that. So we go on a whole trail about that. But I think at the end of the day, it's, can you afford what you're doing? Can you finance it and manage that in a smart way? Because again, financing can be a friend in business, but finance what's important, not just what looks cool.
So 2 things based on everything you said already.
Yeah.
I'd like you to speak to 2 different people. First of all, what would you say to the business owner who is the one who's like kind of doing the comparison thing and looking around and be like, everyone else is doing so well? What would you say to that person?
So I would say comparison is the thief of joy. And we've all gotten in that trap, whether it's individuals or as businesses or organizations, communities, even school districts. It's real easy to get in the comparison game. But especially with AI, you cannot trust what you see.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And so what I would say is if you're going to compare, you just compare yourself from what you accomplished, who you invested in, how did you add value yesterday compared to today. And if you're adding value to someone else in an intentional way, that's a pretty great way to live. And so whether that's through a product or service, if you're adding value to the employees you bring around you, that's a pretty great way to live. And I know it's just easier said than done not to compare, but truly, I've seen multiple businesses who went out and got big loans, and it looked really cool, and they were closed within the first year. As soon as they could get out of that lease, they were out of it, or maybe they still had to pay on that lease for a long time after. And so, so I'd say just be cognizant of that, be cognizant of the negotiations and contracts that you go into, and certainly don't just do it for cool points. And I know it sounds like a high school, but it's a true thing for all businesses. And so it's what I see a lot literally on a small and large scale.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. The other person I want you to talk to is the business owner. Cause you were saying how like every business has hills and valleys.
Yep.
And so I want you to just speak a little bit.
Yeah.
I consider you a motivational speaker. So do a little motivational speaking here to the business owner that is in the valley or feels like they're at the end.
Yes.
Well,
and sometimes there does come an end to certain things. And what I'd say is an end to one chapter is the beginning and start to a new chapter. So if that's you and you're in a place where maybe you've been trying to keep this going because of what it looks like on the outside, because of pride. And that's not even saying pride like in a condemning way, but just in a like, no, I've worked so hard. And people use a phrase, don't keep putting good money after bad. In other words, sometimes you make an investment, you try your hardest, and the season ends. Incredible, hugely successful companies have had to make these same decisions. And so when you think about comparison, or you think about what will everyone think of me, they'll think I'm a failure. First, know that incredible people who have done incredible things, achieved incredible results, whether that's as an individual or as an organization, they've also seen tides turn and have had to make adjustments. And that goes right back to the very first thing I said, which is humility. And that's so much easier said than done, because sometimes a business does come to a time where they need to end. And the market tells us that, or maybe our priorities tell us that. Maybe you're a single mom and you've had a business, and now it's time, you're really feeling called to spend time with those kids. Or maybe you have to take care of a family member, or there could be 100 different reasons why you have to have an end, and sometimes that's okay. And so I want to give you permission to to shift into a new season, because that's also sometimes a healthy choice for your family and for yourself or for your business. And then if you're in a valley as well, but you can still serve, and you've got people around you. What I would say, if it's not time to quit, and many times it's not time to quit, you just have to keep pushing through and think of the long game, because everyone who is ever successful embraced the hard times and actually grew closer. And we went through a time in our business, it was in 2016, when we had 20 teachers at the time, and we lost 10 teachers all within 3 months.
Oh my goodness.
And they were all like, and you would think, oh, are you doing mean things? No, like, it was all great things. They were moving on to be worship pastors in different cities. They were moving and getting married. They were having babies. It was just there was like this life cycle that happened where now this whole group, and I remember crying and being like, oh no, it's half our staff, And within the next year, every single one of those people I still have great relationships with. They helped bring somebody else in to take their spot and to take over their students. We grew from there and grew and grew and grew, and God continued to bless it. And so what I would say is, sometimes you're going to go through a down cycle, and that's part of life. Just think about your own life and your own personal family finances, or your personal family issues, or cycles of life, or raising a child. You go through hills and valleys. That doesn't mean you give up on the child. And it's the same thing with the business. You don't have to give up. You just keep going, and you build your faith as you take steps. And I journal, and I would say another little tidbit for people to do is to journal.
Yeah.
Because if you can journal, man, this is really hard. This is what I'm struggling with. And then you see God's faithfulness through it and how he brought you through that. When you're struggling the next time, and you can share, the mountaintop story too. Like when we hit 500 students, when we hit, at our third location or our fourth location, then that reminds you, okay, he's done it before, he'll do it again. I've gotten through hard times before, I can get through hard times again. We are more resilient than we think. We are more capable than we think. And so I would say you're more capable than you think, and you can do more than you realize if you'll just believe in yourself and trust in God.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's so much more that we could pick your brain about. I mean, literally, so much going on. And, but I do want to kind of switch back into your business owner role and ask you our final question.
Yeah.
That we like to always ask. And that is, what do you have that you don't have fully figured out, but you're choosing to work through and build through it anyways?
Yeah. Well, really what I would say on that is the workforce pipeline development. There were times when it was really easy to get a lot of workforce, and I'm seeing this in every industry across the state and across the nation and internationally.
Wow.
So that gives me hope, actually, and it makes me feel like I'm not alone.
Yes.
Because I literally see it in every industry, just a need for a strong workforce pipeline development plan. We have relationships with some of our local universities, for example, but it's been harder over the last couple of years. And maybe because during COVID, some of these programs shut down, especially in the performance arena. We used to just have like a really strong pipeline coming through. And now it's harder to recruit than it was just a few years ago, you know? And so what I would say is, I'm trusting God. I'm partnering with Destiny, with our team, to help, and we're growing a little bit slower on the workforce recruitment than we did in some seasons, but we're seeing that grow, and we're having to be very intentional. So if you're a business owner, pretty much in any industry, that's probably something you're facing too. And I would just say, keep building those relationships, keep trying to find new ways to recruit, and then when they get in your doors, really try to honor them and take care of them as best you can, because that's really important. The competition is high, and retaining just as much as it is upon attracting.
It definitely puts a different perspective on the importance of retention, because they're not there's people out there, but it's hard to get them.
If you're a specialty, I mean, I remember when I took on the state role and they were like, well, how will you understand manufacturers needing, certain type of engineer or whatever? And I said, well, how easy do you think it is to find a violin instructor or a viola instructor or a flute instructor? They're very specialized, just like a certain type of engineer is. And they're like, oh, I guess that's true. So
I love how you had that answer ready.
That's right. Like, can you name 10 violinists? I'll wait.
I cannot. I actually cannot.
Yeah. So neither could they. And so, it's just like, no, these are specialized, and as AI takes over a lot of the more repetitive type work and the work becomes more specialized, the workforce needs are also becoming more specialized.
That's a good point.
And so, so we're facing the same challenges that so many others are facing. And so we're not in it alone.
Yes.
We're just going to have to be intentional and trust God and continue to do the work that adds value to others.
Exactly. When you're adding value to others, it's always gonna win.
That's right.
It's always gonna win. Well, to close out, tell everyone where they can find you /Anthem Road. I do want to say, if Heather motivated you, inspired you, she does have a book.
I do.
So tell them where they can get the book and where they can find Anthem online.
Yeah, so anthemroadacademy.com. Please come visit us. We have incredible teachers, incredible staff. We teach voice, piano, bass, drums, guitar, of course, violin.
Yes.
And a lot of other instruments, mandolin even, banjo. So please reach out to us at Anthem Road Academy. We teach all student ages. So 4 through 104, whatever works for you. We'd love to join you on your musical journey. And then you can reach out to me at anthemroadacademy@gmail.com or heatherturnertalks@gmail.com is my personal email. And then, of course, I'm at the State Department of Commerce at heather.turner@okcommerce.gov.
And can they get Dream Traders on
yes.
Amazon?
On Amazon and on Audible. And so there's the Audible version.
I have to ask, are you reading it?
I am.
That's so much more fun. I love it when the author reads it.
Yes.
I love that.
Yep. So I'm narrating it, and there's then the book Dream Traders. It's all one word, and it's how to build the life you want in different seasons and stages of your life, how to make the trades that matter for success.
Yeah, you're going to have to get it. You're going to have to read it. So that's it for this session of The Back Office. If this conversation gave you clarity, a new angle, or even just a reminder that you're not the only one navigating this, then it did its job. Take what's useful, apply it, move on it, because no one has it fully figured out, but we are building anyway. And if you found this valuable, share it with another operator who's building, and you can always hang out with us in between sessions at Signify Marketing Social. I'm Dalayna Dillon, and we will meet you back here next time.
Wanna hear you go.